Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre. Merci également à tous vos invités. Ces échanges étaient extrêmement intéressants et constructifs. Et toutes nos excuses, nous avons un délai à respecter. Voici à présent notre seconde table ronde. Son thème, les libertés académiques et la contribution de la recherche aux biens publics mondiaux en Europe. Pour présider cette table ronde, nous accueillons Roxana Minzatou, vice-présidente exécutive de la Commission européenne en charge des droits sociaux et des compétences, des emplois de qualité et de la préparation. Bonjour. Je vous en prie, installez-vous. Pour échanger avec vous, nous accueillons vos invités. Camille Parmesan, chercheuse senior en écologie au Centre national de la recherche scientifique, le CNRS, et professeure adjointe à l'Université du Texas. Robert Neil Proctor, professeur d'histoire des sciences à l'Université Stanford. Anne Bouvreau, présidente de la Fondation Abiona, présidente du conseil de l'ENS-PSL. Florent Ménégo, PDG de Michelin. David Peltiel, professeur de santé publique à l'université Yale. Enfin, Clarisse Lost, vice-présidente de l'EM, organisation professionnelle des entreprises pharmaceutiques en France.
Well, hello everybody, and such a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the entire audience for being present here. I'm not sure, but I think I would move there for my introductory remarks. I think maybe, yeah, or I stay here better. Well, ministers, Stefan, dear Commissioner Zaharieva was here as well, dear representatives of companies. Dear ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the prestigious research community all across the globe, I would say. It is an honor to be here today with you to chair this, well, rather not round table, to chair this interesting panel to discuss the vital topic of academic freedoms and how they contribute to research of global public goods in Europe. I will start with an interesting quote that my colleagues have put here, but of course is by Albert Einstein, so it's important that we always get inspiration from our greatest. It is evident, he said, that any restriction on academic freedom acts in such a way as to hamper the dissemination of knowledge among the people and thereby impedes national judgment and action. Myself, as a very strong supporter of education and research, I firmly believe that academic freedom is not just a right. It is a cornerstone of democracy, and it is essential for our progress. Always has been, always will be. It is through the free exchange of ideas, through the rigorous investigation of facts, and the fearless pursuit of knowledge that we as a society are able to grow, to adapt, to evolve. In Europe, we cherish and uphold these fundamental principles of freedom and of academic freedom included, of course. We understand that the ability to conduct research without fear of censorship or retaliation is not only a privilege, but it is an everyday responsibility that we must all own and assume. And it is our responsibility to ensure that our universities remain these citadels, these bastions of free thought, of critical inquiry, of intellectual curiosity. I was remembering that while we were discussing with stakeholders on what it means now, the link between education and democracy, I was mentioning that many of our universities are older than our nation states. They have been the soul and the birthplace of progress, of democracy, of values, long before certain nation states were formed. And I think we must remember that, and when we talk about the role of universities today and tomorrow. Our commitment to academic freedom is deeply rooted in European values and in our history, just like education, as this is where it all begins. The Magna Carta Universitatum, signed in 1988, has been a guiding light, affirming the autonomy and independence of our universities and their role in promoting academic freedom. On a similar note, the Bologna process, started in 1999, has sought to create a more unified and harmonious higher education landscape, bolstering the pursuit of academic freedom across our continent, as well as the quality of our education. The role of our European universities in upholding European, yet I call them universal, values for all humanity through continuous education, by fostering critical mindsets and contributing to human development that leads to progress, cannot be overstated and cannot be taken for granted. And this is what the dual role of education and research are all about. I really think that it is important that we be aware that democracies, freedom of inquiry, and freedom of speech are taught as early as possible so that they remain our European, our universal values. The connection with education and with early education cannot be understated. And that is also why we propose, for example, in the Union of Skills, an important European policy we launched on the 5th of March, earlier this year, among the sets of basic skills beyond literacy, beyond math, beyond science, beyond digital competencies, the fifth basic skill, the fifth element, the fifth basic skill, the basic skill of democracy, being able to tackle disinformation, misinformation, to have critical reasoning, to understand rights, to understand citizens and civic processes and engagement. Media literacy, so many of the things that we need to teach our young generations and even our adult generations on a more systematic basis, let's say. By fostering an environment where diverse perspectives can be freely debated and explored, our institutions of higher learning and research will continue to serve as incubators for innovation, creativity, and process. I would like to reiterate the importance of academic freedom in Europe and beyond. If we nurture a culture of open inquiry, of critical thinking, of intellectual curiosity, we not only contribute to the advancement of knowledge, but also we strengthen our democracies, our political stability, and pave the way for a better future. These would be a few of my initial remarks, trying also to keep it rather short because we are a bit late. But now I will move to my distinguished panel, to my distinguished guests in the panel, from whom we are very, very eager to learn. I have some questions prepared, and I will ask them to have a short intervention in response to these questions. I will start with Camille Parmesan. Thank you so much for being here, a professor at the University of Austin in Texas. Affiliated with the French National Center for Scientific Research. Two brief questions. How can academic freedom support independent, critical research on issues such as climate change, impact, for example? And given your work both in the US and in Europe, what difference do you see between the two continents? And how can what advice can you give us so that we make Europe an easier target to be chosen, let's say, because we are talking about choosing Europe?
Just some small questions. Well, I'm going to actually illustrate my answer from my own experience. So I have lived most of my life in a country which I have gradually seen science, the respect for science, the support for science being eroded, going back decades. So I am living tribute to you can move beyond even when the climate is becoming more and more repressive. So I'm an American climate scientist. I've worked in IPCC since 1997. I moved to France in 2018 as a laureate of the Make Our Planet Great Again program. That was President Macron's response to withdrawal of the USA from the Paris Climate Accords. At that time, so this were going back some years, the US government fired climate scientists, suppressed global climate data and publication of climate research. And this created an incredibly repressive atmosphere for climate science. The MOPCO Award was allowed me to, coming to France with the MOPCO Award, allowed me to expand my work in ways that would not otherwise have been possible. I had the freedom to serve as coordinating lead author in the last IPCC report, a position that, even though I'd been part of IPCC for more than 20 years, I could not have held that position without coming to France on a MOPCA grant, due to jobs with heavy teaching loads, heavy administrative loads, and ones that discouraged their faculty from working on IPCC. I've never been as professionally well supported as I have been since arriving in France. And I'm delighted to report that a Texan can thrive in Europe. Current attacks on science in the USA go far beyond climate science. So 1,000 grants have been canceled with the National Science Foundation. About 700 grants have been canceled in the National Institute for Health. Across government agencies and universities, thousands of scientists at all career stages have been fired. Many of them are senior, internationally renowned scientists in their field. Whole departments at universities are being reduced and in agencies or closed, greatly diminishing scientific research and science education. Why should Europe care? Research on local problems does sometimes exist, only to serve a small community, but as humans have increasingly begun to dominate the global landscape, local changes in fundamental biological processes and interactions among species are increasingly having global ramifications. There are several health experts here, so I'm not going to directly talk about health impacts, but I do want to mention that ecological changes being driven by climate change are affecting human health. So many of the wild species that are vectors in reservoirs of human diseases, as well as the disease organisms themselves, are all part of global biodiversity. The movements of these species around the globe trying to track their climate space do not know country boundaries. So very simplistically, countries that used to be too cold, such as Nepal and Sweden, are now being invaded by new diseases. This is already happening. People that live in Nepal are suffering 6 new tropical diseases for the first time, including dengue and Japanese encephalitis. These tropical diseases have become endemic as mosquitoes, ticks, sandflies, and diseases they carry move upward due to climate change. Europe is also vulnerable to increased risk of diseases that are historically typical of Northern Africa. And the one point I want to make is the human populations in Europe have not evolved resistance to these diseases, and European doctors are not well trained in recognition and treatment of these diseases. So diseases are a part of global wild biodiversity, as are other wildlife, and do not recognize country boundaries. On the flip side, conservation of species we care about is increasingly needing transnational planning to help them adapt to climate change and protect them as they shift around the world, disappearing from one region and colonizing others. We're seeing changes in basic ecosystem processes from single studies at single field sites in remote, undisturbed areas. Many of these sites were historically carbon sinks, with plants sucking up more carbon from the atmosphere as they grow, then they release as they die and decompose. And about half of all human CO2 has been absorbed by oceans and plants, greatly slowing global warming that we would have had this not been happening. But each study is a single point on the map. And they're happening in diverse systems, from tropical rainforests to Arctic tundra. So what we're seeing are very early stages of moving towards a tipping point in global carbon dynamics, a point which we risk moving into a state of irreversible positive climate feedback. And by that I mean that beyond that tipping point, humans will no longer have the power to slow or stop climate change because the biosphere will be in control. Therefore, we urgently need to move from individual studies in individual countries to globally coordinated studies. We need better monitoring of data with better global coverage, better understanding of the processes so these can all be put into the global climate models. And so again, local research has global implications and requires transdisciplinary, multinational cooperation and a global plan of action.
A bit going to the conclusion, because I have 5 minutes for each speaker. Colleagues, tell me. Thank you.
What I want to say is this, stakeholders are already being affected by the reduction of research, the defunding of databases, the lack of access to environmental and climate databases, the dismantling of user-friendly interactive websites is already affecting health professionals, farmers, small businesses, city planners, military bases, and seaports. So I am an American, which means I'm inherently optimistic. I do believe we can recover from recent setbacks, and that initiatives like this are the first step towards really building a globally resilient climate science coordinated group. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm aside the role with the timer. Very interesting thoughts shared. We will move now to Robert Proctor, professor at the Stanford University, and the first historian to testify against the tobacco industry. A few thoughts on your side. Maybe I won't repeat the questions, but a few thoughts on how we can ensure that European scientific research remains a public good protected from disinformation and corporate influence.
Thank you. Benjamin Franklin, who used to walk these streets himself as a kind of refugee, was once asked, what good is science? And he had a great answer. He says, what good is a newborn baby? And in America, in the 2 centuries since Franklin, really has been a beacon on a hill, a shining refuge for scholars fleeing Nazi Germany or the horrors of Stalin's Russia. And in recent months, we've actually seen a shift here and a kind of reversal of fortunes. We're facing this war on science, which, as you suggested, is much broader than a war on science. It's a war on memory. It's a war on the intellect. It's a war on the truth. It's a war on the future in a certain sense, because much of the harms that we face are harms of delay. The damage will be the delay, because we will solve a lot of these problems. Science is also fragile. It's powerful, but fragile. I'm an expert in agnotology, which is the study of ignorance. Too many of my colleagues study knowledge when there's a lot more ignorance to go around, and we need a lot more study. And science is also easily corrupted. And when it comes to corruption, I want to mention just a couple of examples. One, cigarettes remain the leading preventable cause of death in Europe, killing 700,000 every year. And I've written 3 or 4 books on this. But science was very corrupted by this. 25 Nobel laureates have taken money from the cigarette industry. Nearly 10,000 peer-reviewed medical publications resulted from the instruments of denial, the denial campaign that wreaked havoc on the world for many decades. And this helps explain why a quarter of the French youth still smoke cigarettes, the leading preventable cause of death. And one of the effects of this was a reframing and an alteration of fundamental concepts of causality, where cigarette makers effectively turned cigarettes cause cancer from a scientific fact into a political opinion, which is why when Nixon declared war on cancer in the early 1970s, cigarettes were excluded, even though a third of all cancer deaths are from cigarettes. So science can be corrupted in this way, and that's why we have so many policies now in the medical literature against funding from the tobacco industry. A more current or equally current problem is the whole global warming issue. And there's a huge controversy now about this, about whether to accept funding from the global carbon producers, the big oil companies, big oil. And there's a bond here with tobacco because not only are cigarettes sold at the same place you buy gas, but many of the same denial techniques that were crafted first to deny the hazards of cigarettes are now being used to deny the hazards of global warming. The most important of these would also include distraction techniques by focusing on pseudo-solutions, solar engineering or reforestation, when the fundamental problem is that the carbon has to be left in the ground. That fundamental fact is too often denied. Now, I don't want to be long here, but I want to conclude by noting that we have statues here of the great French Enlightenment, and some of them are pre-French Enlightenment. And now, unfortunately, through the United States, we're suffering a kind of reversal of the Enlightenment, a kind of endarkenment. And my hope is that in the same way that France helped inspire the American enlightenment for the rest of the world, France may also, and Europe as a whole, may help rescue us from some of the tragedies that are now going on in the American endarkenment. And one positive thing about this is, since so many scientists are being fired, it's actually the best scientists, some of the best scientists who are getting fired. And so you should have the sort of the pick of the litter when it comes to hiring really good talent.
Thank you, Robert. So inspirational. Thank you so much. Next, Anne Bouvereau. She is the president of the Abeona Foundation, switching now to ethical and inclusive artificial intelligence, an organizer of the very successful AI Summit here in Paris in February, which unfortunately I missed. But very happy to join you today and to ask you, how do you think we can reconcile rapid technological innovation, of course, especially in AI, with the preservation of academic freedom and the European model based on a human-centric digital governance, with ethical and inclusive AI as core values for a common good?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for organizing this event. I think that's very important. I'll offer a few remarks on AI. Artificial intelligence, of course, is a field of research and innovation of its own, and it's moving incredibly fast. But it's also key to the development of other scientific fields. But to stay on AI as a field for just a second, this is being driven by public and private research, a lot of private research. We, of course, welcome private funding and private research, but we need to ensure that we do not let AI be controlled by private actors. I think that's one of the things that, as Europeans here, we need to be mindful of. This is why this idea of this CERN for AI, and we had the head of CERN in the previous roundtable, this is an idea that I think we should take and implement very quickly. And the École Normale Supérieure, which I chair the board of, and the PSL University Paris School of AI stand ready to participate, as I'm sure many other universities. But AI is also helping other fields, any field that needs data. And I'd like to say a few words about databases and open databases for science today. I'm sure everybody here is somehow or very familiar with the Protein Data Bank. The Protein Data Bank has been maintained and fed since the 1970s by biologists and biochemists from around the world. It has been funded by Europe, by the UK, by the US, by Japan, and it belongs to the public domain. Why am I saying this? Because DeepMind, with its AlphaFold program, trained it on over 170,000 proteins from that data bank. And this led to the ability of unlocking the structure of proteins, and this led to a Nobel Prize last year. This is absolutely great, but this is a reminder that databases, open scientific databases, are absolutely key for humanity. At the February AI Action Summit, and I'm sorry you weren't able to attend, that President Macron asked me to be the special envoy for, one of the initiatives we launched is Current AI. Current AI is a first-of-its-kind partnership or foundation funded by over 400 million today's euros from a number of different partners. And its goal is to ensure AI development to serve the public good. In particular, or as an example, one of its goals will be to develop open, or to help develop, or to fund open databases that can benefit everyone, north and south, east and west. And these essential data sets are global AI public goods, and they're inspired in part by the Protein Data Bank. There's many examples of what you could do with such databases, but I think it's important that we fund, of course, people, that we fund, of course, computing power, and the AI Continent program does that, but also that we don't forget databases. Researchers know very well that the nature of public goods is that they unlock uses that even their creators can't anticipate. This is true of all of research and of creation in general. Now is not the time to cut off resources on research and on data. It's the time to create more. So after the AI Action Summit, just as a conclusion, we can see that all the cards are not yet dealt. Not everything will be developed by the US, not everything will be developed by China. There is an opportunity for Europe with our partners if we act decisively together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Florent Menegaux, the president of the Michelin Group since 2019, well known for advocating for a sustainable industrial model and investment in research. Of course, my main question would be what companies can do to make research careers more attractive in Europe. It's a very simple question, but also the big question, how can industrial leaders like Michelin play a role in building a European research ecosystem that balances academic autonomy with applied research so as to serve public interest?
Thank you. Following the previous panelists, I just wanted to reemphasize why Michelin has been living for more than 130 years. It's because we believe in three things. First one is we care about people. The second one is we believe in science. And the third one is we believe in technology. And that's why we change everything else. We innovate constantly to disrupt our business models so that we can constantly be in the modern age. Innovation is an idea or a research that is brought to market. And that's where industry plays a key role, is we bring things into scale for consumers and customers. And that process can be very long. And therefore we need, and research can be also very long. Sometimes we, right now at Michelin, we are developing themes and materials that will be brought to market in 20 years' time from here. And we have right now two big challenges. One is competitivity. We live in the world, and the world right now is very challenging. And the second thing is we know we need to reduce our dependency on fossil fuel, especially to create our polymers. So in order to do that, we need a new generation of materials based from recycled materials. How do we create a new industry based on recycled materials? Or how do we create new polymers based on materials that are been nature generated on a lifetime scale? Not because fossil fuel is bio, however, it takes a very, very long time. It's a very long-lasting bio. So in order to do that, we know at Michelin we don't have all the skills. Reinventing new generation of materials requires a lot of skills, especially a lot of data, a lot of computing power. We invest a lot in quantum computing, in partnership, because we don't have all the skills inside. We need also hosting of data that is sovereign, so that we can keep our IP properly. We need modelizing, we need digitalizations, we need robotizations, we need also public-private academic partnerships. And that's why at Michelin we have developed partnerships everywhere. We have, like Valeo, thousands of patents all across the world. And in order to regenerate new patents, we create partnerships. Right now we have partnerships, academic partnerships, public partnership, private-public partnerships, and private-private partnerships in France, Spain, Germany, Italy, but also in other parts of the world. And in order for industries to operate, so that we can invest in research, we can invest in our process to bring into scale innovation, we need in Europe new ecosystems, and we need funding that is stable. We also need more academic labs. Right now we have a few, but we need more. We need a massive upskilling and reskilling program so that we can get access to all the talents that would be required to bring to scale all those research and innovation. We need basic training and education in science everywhere at the low level at school, because we know when we recruit, we need those basic foundation in science for the people we recruit. And then we need, at last, a regulatory framework to support partnership and innovation at scale and where it matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Since I don't think I will have a closing remark because we're in a hurry, I would just point out that thank you for pointing the importance of the STEM education early on. The Union of Skills that we launched on the 5th of March has 2 other deliverables with it. I invite you to join hands to implement this STEM education action plan, strategic plan, which is including a lot of solutions exactly on that side to approach scientific education very, very early on. Talking about prevention in education, but not in education, of course, David Paltier is my next panelist. The next panelist I would invite to join us to share a few ideas. He's a professor of public health and health economics at Yale University, famous for research on cost-effectiveness evaluation of prevention policies. And my question is exactly on this, how he sees the role of European researchers in shaping inclusive and cost-effective health policies while maintaining intellectual independence from political and commercial pressure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bon, tout d'abord un petit mot en français, juste pour remercier la communauté scientifique française pour votre solidarité dans vos écrits, dans vos actes, dans vos déclarations publiques. Je sais que je parle pour un grand nombre d'Américains, de scientifiques, qui vous remercient de votre courage et de votre vision. I won't torture you anymore with my French. But I do speak for public health here. So the objective that brought me into the field is one that I think brought many of us into the field, and that was to try to curb infectious disease such as HIV. And you know that over the course of the last 25 years, the effects of that research have been absolutely miraculous, saving millions of lives. But the benefits have extended far beyond HIV. They've extended to other non-HIV diseases, vaccination programs. They've extended to the building of laboratories, the training of workers, the saving of lives that then go on to buy consumer goods. So when we think about public health and investment in research in public health, we're benefiting not just the few, we're benefiting the many. And that research is now threatened. I think we should be realistic about the gift that is being announced here today. 100 million euros is a very generous thing, but the NIH budget for public health is $60 billion. So we're not going to be replacing the NIH, but we don't need to be replacing the NIH. This gift will have enormous benefits, well extended beyond just replacing the NIH. The first place, this initiative provides a platform from which we can all express the principles that we want to defend: academic freedom, independence of research from politics, importance of international networks, solidarity between continents, Europe, Americas, Asia, and Africa. This is about emboldening the investigators who are currently afraid to speak for fear of retaliation or lost funding, the timid university presidents, the president of my own university, who are afraid of calling attention to themselves for fear that they will become the next target, like Harvard or Columbia. This is about counteracting what my colleague Timothy Snyder at Yale refers to as preemptive obedience, the silent acquiescence that teaches autocrats what they can get away with. This is about signaling to idle bystanders that they are not alone and that we have their backs. All along, it's about investing in trust and community and solidarity. Second, the funds that have been allocated to this program can do a tremendous amount of good if they are prioritized. Let's not worry about attracting the great senior researchers with their large laboratories and staffs. They will take care of themselves. This money can be used, if it's prioritized wisely, to targeted special programs that are currently in jeopardy, to young researchers who are seeing their careers threatened and their dreams shattered. We can be very efficient. I like to think of it as sort of jumping on moving trains. We can jump on a few moving trains, and just let me give you a couple of examples. There are a number of trials, large clinical trials, big multinational, multi-agency consortia that mount clinical trials on a rapid basis. The one I'm thinking of is STRIVE. It has always had the involvement of the Americas, Europe, Australia. But in the last few weeks, essential funding for the STRIVE campaign has been cut back by NIH. And this is a simple, cost-effective, easy way where the Agence Nationale de la Recherche sur le Sida, the ANRS, can just step in and save the day. Same thing with the PRISME Côte d'Ivoire study, an interesting study that has long been a collaboration between the United States and French researchers in Côte d'Ivoire. Again, too dependent on NIH, but a cheap, cost-effective way to step in. There are a number of studies that are looking at brand new interventions to prevent postnatal transmission of HIV using long-acting, broadly neutralizing antibodies. Those studies are up, running, peer-reviewed, organized. Unfortunately, the NIH was going to be financing the drug itself. Again, a small logistical thing that can easily be addressed with the funds that we're talking about here today. Over and over again, just jumping on moving trains. Also, several notable studies that target vulnerable populations that the US government has now decided are no longer priority groups. Again, easy for us to step in and save the day. Now finally, I know that there is some question about why new funds are being expended on recruiting foreign talent when so much more could be done to nurture and support homegrown talent here in France. And it's not that I don't agree with that, but my simple response would be that the world needs both. We need both a safe haven for foreign researchers, and we need a thriving native French academic incubator. We have an expression in English: a rising tide lifts all boats. Let us hope that this is such a rising tide.
Excellent energy. Thank you so much for that. And we are closing with, last but not least, the panel with Clarisse Lost. She's the president of the Les Entreprises du Médicament, president of MSD France, a subsidiary of the American company & Co., a leading biopharmaceutical company in the world. So health again. And my question to Clarisse is how we can foster effective collaboration between academic research and the private pharmaceutical actors without compromising scientific independence. Clarisse?
Thank you, and it's a very important and timely question. As the representative of the pharma industry based in France, I'm very honored to contribute to this conversation about the future of science in Europe. Research in medicine is not just about discoveries. It drives innovation, which fuels economic growth, and above all, I mean, it secures our long-term autonomy in addressing health challenges. So let me start, before getting into the independence of research that is so critical. Pharma industry is a key pillar to today's European strong R&D ecosystem and European leadership in health. We have more than 130,000 R&D employees across Europe. And with a collective investment of 45 billion each year, our research is profoundly grounded into partnerships, whether it's with academic research centers or hospitals and healthcare professionals that are involved in clinical trials. And actually, those are creating a virtuous circle by enhancing the visibility and global recognition of the excellence of the French and European research. So public-private collaboration is essential to tackle unmet medical needs. And it has, if we look at the past decade, I mean, it has already led to very transformative breakthroughs. If I take the example of immunotherapy, gene therapy, personalized medicine, and at the end, it's contributing to global public good, which is a healthier population. So in today's global race, and in a time of growing health challenges, public-private collaboration is no longer an option. It's actually a strategic necessity and an opportunity to build stronger bridges, to foster more collaborations across Europe. Yet, scientific independence remains crucial. Because, I mean, this is what is leading to pursue bold risk, bold ideas, high-risk projects, which sometimes leads to serendipitous discoveries, like we've seen in, many years ago, insulin, penicillin. But freedom in research also needs collaboration. Today, no one can succeed in isolation. Today's research is complex, it's costly, and above all, it's profoundly interdisciplinary. So we need this independence. And to ensure independence, a public-private partnership should be built on transparency, mutual understanding of both worlds, of mutual trust, of clearly defined roles, and shared scientific ambition. So that collaboration is not a constraint on academic freedom, but actually an enabler. So I'd like to take two examples to conclude, two examples that illustrate this very well. First, let me take an example in my company, MSD. We have a fund that is called MSD Avenir, which provides multi-year support to French academic research teams, enabling them to pursue those high-risk, high-reward projects with full independence and free of short-term funding pressures. The fund has already allowed 31 patents owned by the researchers and more than 550 peer-reviewed publications. Another example that you've probably heard, I'm sure all of you here have heard, is the bioclusters, like the Paris-Saclay. They bring together research universities, hospital, tech transfer institute, private companies, biotech startup around shared goals. And actually, if you look at, because of the diversification of financing from public and multiple private companies, this is actually leading to independence, but it's also helping to secure significant fundings to have this big exploratory project that we need for breakthrough therapies. So on these two examples, allow me to conclude maybe on what was said on the first roundtable. That is also very important. If we ambition Europe to lead in medical innovation, thanks to a bold, a collaborative, and independent research, we must also create the right environment to support long-term investments. That means providing the proper incentives that reward innovation through IP framework, the proper market access condition. And as well, it was said, I think, by you, regulatory pathways that actually foster speed and enhance Europe's competitiveness that we need so much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have been extremely efficient. Thank you so much for your messages. Just a few ideas to close this wonderful panel and this discussion. I'm Commissioner for Education and Skills as well. You are joined here, of course, by Commissioner Zaharieva, who's in charge of research and innovation. And if ever there was a time that politically we acknowledge the importance of innovation, of research, of education, as a precondition for quality research and innovation, this is the time. And if ever there was a place that could champion this, Europe is the place. And if ever there was a leader inside Europe that could push this topic further, then France for sure is that leader. I'm really happy to be in this place with this community talking about how we can make Europe a more attractive place for the most brilliant